Nahaganasinga. Welcome back, everyone, to Rising Warriors Rachael Kulei. And I have my beautiful mother and business partner, Zemi Wellness and Indigenous Sovereignty, with us today. She's also Native Lens. And we are going to do some segments. And last topic that we spoke with Rochelle on was the sacred roles in bearing children. And there's just so many different levels and layers that we can go into of children, and then going into the different stages from Indigenous, the Native perspective point of view. And so we are going to start with little elders, taking off from the roles of bearing, sacred roles and bearing children. And so then we're going to be just doing different segments coming off of this every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So welcome, Mom Rochelle.
Thank you.
And I'm excited for this one because this is just important. And I'm just seeing so many different things that are going on in the world and with children. And um, it breaks my heart and saddens my heart to see the disconnection with parents to their children when they're, especially these little ones, when they're sacred, and
Mm-hmm.
they are our little elders. And in the Native way, we're always taught that the little ones, because the veil is still so close and open for them, that they see things and they hear things that if we're not in tune with, then I hear a lot of people dismiss these little ones and saying that you don't see that, or you're not hearing that, or they dismiss them, when in the Native perspective, those are gifts. And so
Mm-hmm.
those are some of the things that we wanted to talk about and go deeper into discussion with these little ones that are our little elders. And so welcome, and I'll just go ahead and take it away, and welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, as Rachel and I were discussing the segments of topics of Indigenous perspective in rearing children. And as we began to talk about those things, there's no way, any possible way that it could be discussed within this hour. So we decided to do segments of that because I'll just give you a heads up, like generosity, spirituality, honesty and deception, fear and courage, humor and art. And so there's so many things about every one of these segments that I want to discuss about when you're raising children, and talk about balance and spirituality, which I discussed, and then nature. How do we interact with nature, and how does nature teach us to be better teachers and students? So
Mhm.
so in the so I wanted to talk about where most of the time as adults we're the students, and we are not really the teachers. Our children, the little ones, are the teachers.
Mhm.
And because there are sacred children, and because they are closer to the veil, they see more and are open to things, so they often can see things that in a perspective we cannot see. um, so we're always the students learning from those powerful little ones. And uh, so it's our role then to open our eyes and see their perspectives. But one thing about children is that I think we talked about this before, they expose your weaknesses. Because I
Mhm.
remember being a young mom, like, I think I'm going to be a great mom. I think I could do this. I've got it. I'm pretty strong. And then I realized, oh, that was not what I expected. And then there's another perspective, like, I have to switch my thoughts and say, okay, well, I need to work on that, and be aware of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, it seems, like every mammal, everything in nature, all depend on solely on the parents. They're solely depend on the parents to nurture them, to care for them. I mean, we're the foundation of the child's growth and development, physically, spiritually, and mentally, emotionally. We're the foundation. And if we can't lay that foundation, there's going to be difficulty that's going to come, that a child is going to have to deal with, or there won't be no understanding of why they behave the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something that I want to really talk about. Is I remember the day that um, I had you, and I remember that how I was actually kind of overwhelmed in ways, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gifted now to this child from Creator, and this responsibility, one, to protect you, but how am I going to teach this child, and what are your gifts? And and just feeling a little overwhelmed. But I knew that I had to solely rely on Creator. And your dad and I we talked about that we wanted to raise our kids, and raise you in the most positive atmosphere possibly, that we would not expose you to even negative words, like the words no and don't do that. And I've heard parents tell their children they're stupid, and I'm like, that we're not doing that. There will be no negative words. In fact, I don't even remember hearing that from my mother. I don't recall her ever saying anything like that to me. Um, so, so we decided that we're going to have to walk the talk. And I knew that if I was going to place some kind of rule or teaching, and place that on you, I was going to have to make sure that I followed that same thing. Parents often say, well, don't do what I say, or don't do what I do, just do what I say. And that's not true. It's such a double standard. We have to walk the talk that we expect from them, and we have to follow through with that. And that, in many cases, is really difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's something that I want to talk about, the indigenous perspective in many cultures throughout the world of the indigenous people. It's all about generosity. That's the first lesson, is teaching children about generosity. And in many indigenous language, giving and receiving mean the same. They're the same. So I give, you receive, I give. And so we had to be the parents. That's the first step, to exemplify giving and receiving. And we have to emphasize sharing and giving and taking turns. And we have to think about materials. Sometimes we get overprotective over our materials when children break things and lose things. And is that important to us? Maybe teaching them that one particular thing is special to me, so be really careful, or please, don't touch these things. But to me, when children are little, 5 and under, maybe 6, put everything away that is special to you. If you don't want it broken, then don't have it out, because there is a possibility a ball will get thrown, or just because they're a little clumsy, because they're not as coordinated. So then put them away, so then you don't have to scream and yell, or be constantly worried if something's going to be broken. It's just releases you from that as a parent, but also releases, you don't have to worry about it for the child, and that alleviates some of the problems, like and then as they get older, then you could teach them these are special, so we're not going to touch these things. So, but we have to be the ones to compromise too. We have to communicate with them and teach them to compromise, teach them to share. But by doing that, we have to play with them. We have to interact with them. So, little Nataya has this house, and she has animals and this playhouse, and we both sit on the ground, and I do role playing with the little animals and talk to them, and we talk about sharing, and I try to bring in little things like, hey, and there's too many animals, well, let's take turns, why don't I eat first? And so she doesn't know their lessons, but she's interacting, and I'm teaching her how to play, and so that when friends come along, they will understand how that goes. But one of the most beautiful things, I think, in our culture is giveaways, teaching the children at a really young age. I don't know, Rachel, you probably know the elder Ed Edmo, who's a storyteller. And I don't know if you remember in school, he came and he was a guest speaker as a storyteller. I don't know, during Thanksgiving, I brought him in to Cardin. Do you remember?
I do. Yeah.
And I brought him in, and he shared this most beautiful story about his nephew who was having a special ceremony for him. And he was a young little boy. He was, I think, 6 years old. And they were having a special ceremony. And so this was a celebration, and all the people came in, and he was excited about it. He knew that all his favorite toys were going to be there. And so there was these gifts, and they put it in the center of the gymnasium, and they put all these gifts in the center. And so then the parent, and he went to the center, and he saw his favorite toys, and he was just so excited about them. And then his parents took him and pulled him aside and said, now, you have a choice here. We're going to ask you to give all these gifts away and share them with the community. And this will teach you generosity. This will give you this will teach you a lesson of sacrifice. And so, and great, it would bring honor to the family. Or he could choose to keep the gifts. And so the young boy had to make a choice and a decision. And at the end, the decision was that he was going to give away the toys and for an exchange of honor, and that he would sacrifice that. But I'm sure he didn't fully understand that importance, but perhaps he did, because, as young ones do, understand that. And he knew that it would mean something more it would be more meaningful to his parents and him and his family if he shared with the community. And when I first heard that, I was so amazed and grateful for a culture that teaches us to give and share. So I thought that, and just giving, and when we teach those children at a young age, and those little ones see, parents having giveaways, and we help and we give, and the children have a basket and they go out and they give to people, and it teaches them the importance of community. That it's not about us. It's not our way of thinking about ourselves. It's not we don't think as an individual. That's Western thinking, individualizing. It's all about me. But instead, it's about the community. How are we going to bring everyone together and serve each other? But when European contact comes, we don't have this understanding of individualism. We don't have we don't understand that that's like a lower vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew the importance of sharing and giving, and we understood that. And it's interesting that there's been research, but the more we share, our orbital cortex is developed when we practice generosity. It reduces anxiety, depression. It activates what we call mirror neurons. So it teaches us to connect with family and develop social connections with other people. And when that is not developed, we are more self-centered, unhappy, and we are more bitter and angry.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there has been studies about this, and I thought this was interesting because that is like our frontal lobes are developed at a higher rate than many other people, and that comes naturally. And I think it's genetics then that it's passed on from our ancestors, and then but also that continuation of sharing. Now things changed, as you know, and I want to pay honor to the children that they found in Canada, the 213 children that were found under the school. And, it's things like that are things change. I can't even fathom harming a little child. I just don't understand it, but I know they're in a great place, and I'm grateful for their bravery and their strong little warriors' hearts. I'm grateful for them. But this orbital frontal cortex, the more we practice generosity, the more it grows. And then we have bigger hearts, and we have more compassion for each other. So if it's developed, the cortex, if it's used more, then we reach a higher level of compassion. And then, so like I said, in the European or the Western world, we're more focused on the individualism. But Indigenous people and the cultures are more focused on the collective. And how am I going to help that person? And how are we all doing? The other day, I was driving by the airport and taking the side roads. And where most of the homeless are all camped out. When I drove by, they're gone. And I'm like, where are they? What happened to them? And I thought, we we want to displace people, and we don't like something, we push them away and we relocate them, and we think that that's a better thing for that person, but we have no compassion. And that is what historically has happened to us, especially in boarding schools, and those things were taken from us, especially those little ones. When that was in the midst of being developed, that the frontal cortex, it was being developed. And when they were taken away as little ones, then that doesn't come naturally for everyone. Fortunately for us, Grandma always shared her stories about the community, and how on the reservation in Washakie, it was like a cul-de-sac of all the people. And she would share stories of my grandfather, who would had a pickup, and he would pick up all the elders, and then he would take them to the grocery store, or he would take if it was Mother's Day, he would get roses, and he would go to all the women in the cul-de-sac and give them roses. And or he would get Christmas trees and go up in the mountains and chop the Christmas tree and give everybody a tree. And then people and the men would go up and gather, go up in the mountains and hunt. And then they would take, not just for their own families, but for the whole community. They would give meat for everyone. And so that's how my mom grew up, and she passed that down to me. And the importance of being generous and giving. I to this day don't have anything from my childhood, because I gave it to someone who I felt needed it, but I learned that from my mother. I learned that generosity was more important than materials and secular, materials and things that don't really matter, that is not ever going to go with you to the spirit world. So generosity is important, and in learning that and how to develop that and teaching the children. And I love the part of our culture that we have those giveaways, and the children, they see those things. They see the parents, they see the adults giving and sharing. And we're not the richest people either. And yet we still have the means, the community, to come together if we know someone's got a giveaway and they can't afford it. So we'll all help and pitch in to help, for the giveaways at powwows. And so it's this beautiful example of generosity that we are teaching these little ones. Do you want to say anything?
I just keep hearing this quote that I think it was Chief Joseph, Grandpa, one of my it was I keep saying it's a picture, and it says something along the line that us natives, we never believed in homeless and having our own. And if somebody was to be so-called homeless in the way that we are in this world today, there was no such thing as that, because if they didn't have a horse, we would give here's a horse. If you didn't have a teepee, here's a teepee. If you needed a hide, and that elk hide or that buffalo robe, here's a buffalo robe. There was never any entitlement to anything, and it was always a generosity of giving, and whatever I give you, some way or another, it's going to come back. But it's said in shorter words than that, but that's kind of like the thing that, like, we've always been taught and growing up is, there's so many times where I'm like, I just want to hold on to it, but then at the same time I'm like, no, they need it more than I do, and somewhere down the road it's going to come back, and it does. Somewhere down the road, that blanket comes back in a different form, or that earring comes back, or that money comes back in a different way, or food comes and shows up in a different way. So it was always, that teaching has been for long, is that's what breaks my heart with the homeless right now, is that's us as a community. That's our responsibility. Is why aren't we taking care of them? Why aren't we helping? And yet we rely on the government to do everything and to take care, but really it's our responsibility if you want to see change. And so that's what was just coming to my mind, was just that giving. And there, you know never, like, I remember the first time we saw fences, and we were like, what are these fences, like, why are there fences here? And it's just, why are there the borders? And it was like, there is no border there. It was like this welcoming and the sharing it was constantly sharing, and it was always looking out for each other, and it didn't matter if you were blood related or not. And it was the same thing with the going back to the little ones. It's the community that helps raise them. And I think that's what really brought me to the little ones is, really thinking of my niece, Nataya, and my nephew, Ryder. Those two I really have been able to be with since day one of their birth, and helping raise them, and playing that auntie role. And I just started seeing more and more of, the importance of helping raise these other children, because there's things on certain levels like, crystals, and sitting with the earth and things like like my sister, she can teach Nataya on that level. But at the same time, you as a little one, you tend to listen to other people a little bit more that aren't your mother. And
Mm-hmm.
right. And so that's where the grandma comes in, and the aunties and the uncle, and sitting there. And like you were saying earlier, like I have all these rocks and these, crystals all over the house, but I could put them up and out of the way. But instead I sit there and I'm like, okay, she could break it, but it's a crystal, it's a rock, we can get more. It's more about teaching her, what is this? Oh, you gravitated to this one. Oh, okay. So what's going on today? And she really likes the amethyst, or she really likes the rose quartz. Oh, okay. So your heart, we want to work on your heart today. And so, which ones do you need today? And so she'll go and she'll start to learn, and I'll teach her the different stones, and she'll feel them. And I'm like, okay, but be careful, be gentle. And sometimes things fall, and things happen, but at the same time she's understanding, oh, be careful. Instead of getting mad at her and yelling at her, it's more of like, oh, no, no, it's okay, it's okay. And like when she falls too, it's like, I give her high fives. I'm like, yeah, get up. And she's all crying, and I'm like, okay, come on, keep going, high five, knuckles. And I'm like, you're so strong. And she's like, yeah, I'm strong. And she goes like this, and she's like, strong like auntie. And I'm like, yeah, you're strong like me, and get up, keep going. And and I noticed that, like, when she first started falling, if you reacted, oh my goodness, then she started crying, and then she would like go and she would like be dramatic. But the moment like we started clapping when she fell, when she first started walking, and I just turned it into a thing of just, clapping. And before you know it, every time she falls when she's trying to learn to walk, she's now like clapping for herself when she fell, and she's getting back up and she's clapping for herself. And
Yeah.
so, it's like simple things like that, that I'm seeing, and I'm like, there's all these little things that we're so stuck in this world of go, 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 that I think as parents, and even as aunties, or uncles or grandparents, that we forget to slow down and take time, and put your phone away. And I love that little one, she'll even go up to her mom or her dad, and she'll grab the phone, and she'll put their phone down, and like literally grab her dad's face, and like, look at me, like, pay attention to me. And he's like, oh, okay, like, you want to play, what are we doing? And
Yeah.
but they're so smart. And and it's like there's such these little gifts, and it's so beautiful to be able to see these these little ones. But at the same time, I feel so bad for those of them that they don't get these engagements, and they don't. It's almost like the parents, you're setting your children up for failure in a sense. and
Mhm.
and it's heartbreaking. It breaks my heart, because it's
Yeah.
like you have these little beings, and yeah, we have life that's going on, and we have struggles, and we have our own jobs and relationships, and things. But like what I'm seeing a lot right now too, because I have several friends, it's like they're choosing abusive relationships over their children and protecting their children, when their children are even coming and saying, Mom, this guy is not a good guy. I don't like him. I don't feel safe. And to me, I'm like, why aren't you listening to your child? You're being abused. You're in this abusive relationship. Your child is now being abused in this relationship, but why are you staying?
Mm-hmm.
And I understand being coming from abusive relationships and an abusive marriage, and wanting, seeing the good in that person, but at the same time, when is enough? When is enough?
Mm-hmm.
And when are you going to see that this person is stuck in their ways, and this is who they are? And I went down that because I wanted to believe that, my ex had, because there was such a little glimpse of, a good person. I know there's a good person in there, but that only good person came out 1% out of the time. There was just a little small percentage. And so you justify, to stay in these relationships, but at the same time, when you have children, now you're affecting the children in a whole nother way. And I was fortunate, enough to grow up where I can honestly say I've never seen my dad yell at my mom. I've never heard him cuss at her. I've seen my mom like be stern and snap and native style woman, Shoshone woman. And but even then, she's never called him names. They've never thrown anything at each other. So I was very fortunate in growing up and not being raised in with alcohol or drugs or that type of abuse and um toxic relationship. So for me, I experienced it myself on my own, but I have also witnessed, and helping raise, ex stepchildren and things, and helping kind of trying to correct patterns even with the abuse of what went on in their toxic relationships with their moms at that time. And so, like, for you, like, you went through things with your mom, with grandma, with her, with your stepdad. And so I guess where grandmas are wanting you to kind of talk about this now is like, how were those things, as a little one, because I know you still remember that. And so
Mm-hmm.
being as a young child, seeing your mom being abused, and seeing, your aunties even going through the abuse, and, those things as a child, what did that do?
Well, for one thing, it was like we were talking about children with gifts. And fortunately, these gifts carried me through those difficult times. And, when I was really little, maybe like three, 4, I vividly remember while all the toxic things were happening outside, at the time they did party and my stepdad was abusive. Um, and there would be a lot of screaming and yelling. But I remember one time, well, many times, that I would lay down in fear, wondering what's happening, because I wasn't used to that at all until he came into the picture.
Hmm.
And, but every night I would lay down and then I'd open my eyes and there'd just be this beautiful veil. Like I would see these light white curtains and they would surround me in this, like it was like a canopy, a beautiful white canopy of curtains around me. And I just would feel this overwhelming love and power of peace. and comfort, like I was safe. And then I would look, and then I would see the spirits all around my bed or around me. And then I would go to sleep. And I had that dream for, well, not a dream. It was just how it would happen every night. So then with that, it gave me a sense of power of who I was. It gave me a sense of power that I wasn't alone, and that there was a creator. There are my ancestors. There are greater power, spiritual things that are more than me, that are protecting me and helping me stay safe. And so with that always gave me the sense of importance. Like they were the ones that helped raise me. The ancestors, my grandpas and grandmas. And I had the sense of creator loving me. It's not till I was maybe 12 years old that when you hear from like my stepfather, as I got older, 9, 10, that it stopped. And I think it was the more he was in the picture, the lower the vibration, that energy of the house. And then I didn't have them anymore. I didn't see them anymore. And then by 12, I gave in and thought, oh, he must be right. I'm not good enough. I'm not beautiful. I'm not, all the negative words that he was trying to place upon me, when reality, it was his experience of what he felt about himself and placed it on me. And that's the thing, is I'm talking to the little ones and the adults. We have to remember those experiences that we had, that they are not ours. If some adult would have came to me and said, Rochelle, continue to be strong. Don't pay attention to what these adults are saying to you, because this is about their own story. And because it's their own story, they're trying to now place it on you and make it your story. And we can't do that. They are those stories of what they placed on us is not true. It's false beliefs. And if we can somehow do the healing and try to get past those false beliefs and create new stories and understand our value and who we really are, that's what we need to focus on. And these children, whether they're related or not, blood or not blood, they need us, and they need us to smile at them. All the time at stores, I smile at little children, and they somehow connect. And I know they know they like know I know who they are. And because we just instantly connect. It's like babies do that right away. We stare at each other, and then I smile and I tell them in my mind, you are an amazing little child. So whether we are directly connected with children or not, we need to instill in them and be that light, be the aunties to them, and give direction and help them, and even if it's behind, I do it. I probably should have, but I will always stand up for a child. I don't care where they're at in community or at a store. If I see a child that's being abused or in a wrong way that is not right, I will step in, because who's going to be the voice for that child? Who's going to be the voice? I had an experience. I was at a grocery store, and this baby was like Nataya's age, but a little smaller. He was like 2 years old, and she kept yanking on his ears, and she was pulling on it, and nobody was saying anything. There was a long line, and I looked around, and I saw her do that, and I couldn't stop. I grabbed her hand, and sternly, I'm like, looked at her and like, do not touch this little boy like this again. He you're going to hurt his ears. He's a fragile little thing. You don't need to do this. And I said, I will meet you outside when you're done. And I put my things away. I didn't buy my things. And she went out the door, and I met her out the door. My first thing to her was, what's going on? What's happening to you? You're taking it out on this little baby, and you're something's happening to you. And then that's when she just gushed it out and cried. And whether she stopped, I don't know, but we have to be the voices for those little ones who don't have a voice. And we have to stand up for them, and we have to help them. And we have to, even if a child, sometimes, I've even, when a parent's been screaming, I hate when parents take their children to the grocery store in the middle of the night when they know they're tired. On the other hand, I can't judge that, because maybe this is the only time the parent could go, and they just got off work and they're a single parent. So I'm not judging that. But what I am thinking about is, they're going to be tired. They're sleepy. They're hungry. They're just grumpy little ones. So then if you have to take them, then you got to consider that they're tired and they're going to whine. And because they're tired and they're whining, they're wanting everything, candy, cookies, and you say no, but they whine. And you know what? You just have to deal with that, or don't take them, if you could find someone who would watch them. But we have to have so much compassion and look at our weaknesses. They are exposing our weakness, and therefore we need to step back and look at ourselves and say, what is it about that child is teaching me something, and why am I so upset about that? Why am I expecting perfection from a 2-year-old who hasn't developed and will not develop completely till they're in their 20s, really?
Mm-hmm.
But why are we putting these expectations on those little ones that are so high that they haven't yet developed? And also be patient, because everyone is different. Give them some compassion, but most of all, give yourself compassion. We can't be perfect in the house cleaning. I always wanted everything to be just right, but I had to let it go, because it was that, or I was always going to be upset about the house not being clean, or, being dirty all the time. It is such a hard teaching tool. Children they're like, they will try your patience, and or always hearing over and over and over the same words. What? What? And it's like, okay, how can I reword this? Like, your sister was saying, the little one kept saying, huh? And so she said she must not be understanding exactly what I'm saying. So she said, I got to think about how to reword it. And once she reworded it, then she got it.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have to think of this in their development, being patient, but it also teaches us patience. And then it teaches us how much the Creator must love us, because they certainly have, and I say they because I think about our ancestors, but I think of our beautiful mother, as well. And they practice patience, and they still love us, right? They still have patience for us. They know we're going to get there. But we also have to be humble enough and just submit ourselves and say, Creator, I don't know this child. I don't know everything about them. Please teach me. Please help me to raise them in a way that's going to make them a better person and also fulfill their role here on this earth that they had come here for, that I would be a part of that in raising these children. But like I said, not just the children of our own blood, but others. You know, we are very important. Or I remember as a little girl how important it was for me, even when a stranger at a store would just smile at me and just wink, and I get shy, but then it made me feel, oh, they see something amazing in me. A smile to a little child, and will make their day. You're going to make amazing person someday. You're going to be a big person someday, and you are now. You're a great person now. Our words to everyone in the community is important, and how we treat each other and exemplify to them. And that we have to be close to the Creator. We have to have an understanding what His perspective is for that child and each other and our own inner child. Let me see your inner child. What is it that needs to be fulfilled, that is missing in your life? Because there's a lot of broke children without that foundation. How could you believe there's a Creator, a higher power, if your own parents couldn't give you that foundation? Right? So we need to focus more on higher levels of compassion, and by developing that cortex and teaching our children that same thing, help develop that so that they grow up to be compassionate people. Us.
Thank you. We're just going to
Thank
leave it with
you.
that.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. And
Thank
stay
you.
tuned, everyone, for next week, for the next segment, Wednesday at 5 p.m. on Pacific time. What is it? 8 p.m. if you're on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good week.